Hi, I'm Brenda Ellis, author of Artistic Pursuits, an art curriculum for preschool through high school. Today I wanted to talk about how a lot of us have very negative attitudes towards making mistakes. And I want to talk about how that's not an idea that we use in art at all. You often think that if a line goes the wrong way, you've made a mistake. That isn't really what's happening. In art, trial and error are absolutely essential to drawing a good drawing. So what does that mean? That means that we start with lines that define the outside edges of what we're looking at. And as we continue to make more lines, we see that the first lines weren't exactly in the right place. It's a matter of building up your drawing. It's a process. Now, if you don't think this is true, I want to show you a picture of one of the most famous artists of all time, Leonardo da Vinci. He used this exact process. In this work, you can see that on the horse's legs, there are lines of where he first started, and then as the horse developed, then he changed those lines and actually drew other lines that were even more accurate, and those became his final lines. Now, I want you to pay attention to what happened here. He did not erase the first lines. Sometimes when we erase, we're actually getting rid of information that we really need. So in art, instead of using your eraser right away, we do something called redrawing. It's also called restating. But what that means is that we don't use our eraser. We actually leave our first lines, but then we restate where those lines should be by drawing other lines. Now, the way this works best is when you start with very light lines and you work up to dark lines, because that means the light lines are not going to appear as obvious as your darker final lines. And that's a really great way to work. But I want you to get out of the habit of thinking that you're making mistakes. This is not about making it right the first time. This is a process of finding out where your lines are going. And those first lines tell you a lot about where your next lines should go. So today I want you to think about redrawing. I want you to put that eraser away for a time. And I want you to just look at your object, start out with lines, make them light because you know you're going to change them, and then continue to look at your object. And as you add more and more lines into your drawing, your lines are going to start lining up closer and closer until the lines you have on paper match more closely to what you see. So let's try it today. Set aside your eraser for the first part of your drawing. I want you to get many lines on paper before you erase. Today, work from a photograph of an animal or other object that you enjoy drawing. Always choose to draw the subjects that please you. I have sped up this film so that you can see quickly how I redrew the edges of the horse. I drew the first lines, and as I continued to look at the photograph, I drew additional lines to better show the edges that I saw in the photograph. The eraser is most useful in the final stages of a drawing, after you have made many lines on the paper. Thank you for joining me. I hope you've enjoyed learning to draw from observation. Be sure to sign up on our email list so that you can receive notifications of each new lesson. And I'll see you next week.